Hello, this is Father Gabriel Tanous. I'm the priest here at St. Elias in Atlanta, Georgia. This is a video series that I do for catechism. It's something that I've done in the past. This is something that I've recorded in the past, and I'm re-recording them now that it's 2026. I'm hoping to be able to get these all recorded this year, and kind of start anew and start fresh and kind of give you guys a fresh perspective since a lot has happened since the last time I've recorded all these videos, which was 2021, I believe. Um, so we're gonna go through this, and a lot has changed since the first iteration of these videos, and so I'd like to kind of refresh, restart, and kind of get you guys everything that you need. One, we've seen an explosive amount of growth in our church in the last few years, which has been really fascinating to see. To just give you a perspective, in 2018 and 2019, we received 5 new members into the church per year. That was something that was pretty common at the time. And then 2020 happened, COVID lockdowns and all those things. Then 2021, we came out of that and we had like 18 people become Orthodox that particular year. 22, 23, we saw an average of 15 per year, which was really fascinating. This was a threefold increase over what we had seen in 18 and 19. And then in 24 and 25, we received like 25 and 30, respectively. So it's really been a fascinating time of growth in our churches. Orthodoxies just seems to have recently hit the American mainstream, and a lot of people are coming and inquiring about the church. Because of that, and I'm only one guy. And also just we live in Atlanta, Georgia, so the traffic is just unbelievable. People's work schedules, people's lives are very different than they were even 5 and 10 years ago. So what we're doing nowadays is I'm recording all of my lectures. I used to sit in my office and teach all these classes. But I'm recording all my lectures, putting them on our church website, and under the Catechism tab. It's been really successful in the first iteration. We're hoping that this second iteration will be a little bit better. We'll add a little bit more content, a little bit more pictures and video content for you to kind of look through. What we also would like for you to do while you're watching all these videos, hopefully you're not binge watching Father Gabriel talking about these classes. But my hope is that what you'll do is you'll also read a book by Metropolitan Hilarion Alfeyev. He's one of my favorite authors. The book is called Catechism. I would like for you to pick that book up in the church library, in the church bookstore rather, and it's about $27, $28, including tax, from the church bookstore. And if you want to get it on Kindle, you certainly could do that. I think it's half the price of that, but it's not a solid book. Book has a lot of pictures in it, really good description, really good, and very accessible. It's one of the best authors in Orthodoxy today. He is a little controversial, but his content is fantastic. So I want you to read his book as well, and in addition to watching my videos. My videos are posted on our church website. They're going to be posted in the order in which I want you to watch them. Please do so from the church website. In addition, I would also like for you to make sure you schedule appointments with me. I should see you probably once a quarter. You are going to spend a good year to become Orthodox. Before we embrace you and bring you into the Orthodox Church, we need to see you in the church for a good year. We want to see you in church pretty much every Sunday, if that's possible, as much as is possible. If you have extraordinary circumstances, please let me know, and I will do my best to accommodate your needs. And we want to see you in church. You need to find a sponsor to bring you into the church. So you need to make friends with the people of the church. This is something that you have to maybe step out of your own comfort zone in order to do. And I really encourage you to do so. I would love for you to do so, and I'm hopeful that when you do these things, you'll get a good idea of what orthodoxy is. I want you to develop an Orthodox mindset overall, and it's probably a little different than what you're receiving from some of the videos you might have been watching on YouTube or on TikTok or something along those lines. Um, so I'd like to introduce myself and let you know that who I am and where I came from. My name is Father Gabriel Tanous. I am the pastor here at St. Elias in Atlanta, Georgia. I have been here for almost a decade, and I'm a father of 3 children. I'm the husband to a beautiful woman named Julia Gabriela, and we're very blessed to be here in Atlanta, and hope to continue our ministry here. Um, what I tend to think about myself and my life, I ask myself a simple question, and I think most of us should reflect on how did I get here? And so when I think about that, I think, okay, I got here in July of 2017, and I've been here for those years. And before that, I spent 2 years in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and as the pastor of that community called St. Philip in Davie, Florida, which is the suburb of Fort Lauderdale. And before that, I was in seminary. I was in seminary for 3 years in New York at St. Vladimir Seminary. Whilst I was in seminary, I was ordained a priest in my 3rd year, and I was assigned to be at the cathedral in Brooklyn, New York, which is the church that St. Raphael of Brooklyn, that's the church that he founded 100+ years ago for our archdiocese. And before that, I spent 2 years ministering to the people in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is kind of sort of upstate New York, about 70 miles north of New York City. And so I spent 3 years of my life in New York. Before that, I was in Houston, Texas, Cypress, and Humble, depending on the time I was there. I spent about 4 or 5 years there, where I met my wife, Julia Gigi. She lived in Sugar Land, Texas, so it was a suburban part of Houston, Texas. And it was really a good, wonderful time of my life. And that's where I received the call to go to seminary and to become a priest. So I hold Houston fondly in my memory, and also my family lives there. My family being my parents, and 3 of my siblings and their families. I'm one of 6 children of my 2 parents, and so we before we moved to Houston, Texas, most of us, we lived in Pennsylvania. So I grew up in eastern Pennsylvania. If you look at a map and you find Allentown and Philadelphia, and you point to the center of both of them, you will find where I grew up. It was a town called Lansdale, and I went to church in Souderton, Pennsylvania. And at the time, the priest there was Father Boniface Black, and he was a great mentor for me. And once I was 14 years old, he told me, someday you'll be a priest. And so that never really escaped me, and I kind of felt called to the priesthood ever since I was 14. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I went to Penn State University for a few of those Pennsylvania years, 4 of them specifically, and I was learned and had really good lifelong friends really now. from the Penn State OCF, the Orthodox Christian Fellowship at the time, and went to church at Holy Trinity, where Father John Reeves, he was an OCA priest, wonderful man, taught us a whole bunch about ourselves. So I spent 4 years at Penn State, and before that, I was in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. I went to North Penn High School, really good school, I guess, at the time. And before that, I was 3.5 when I came to America. So before I came to America, I was born in a country called Jordan, in the capital city of Jordan called Amman, which is the capital of Jordan. And so that's where I was born, and that's where I was baptized. And before that, my family came from a town called Elid in Palestine, which is now modern day Israel. After the 1948 Nakba, my parents, my grandparents, that were in Jaffa at the time, were forced off of their land and out of their homes, never to return to Palestine again. That was called the catastrophe, or the Nakba, which happened in 1948 when the creation of the state of Israel took place. And so before that, well, my mom's side of the family, I should say also, I think it's important for my history. My mom's side of the family is actually from Jerusalem proper. So they were also forced out during the Nakba, and all of their family ended up in Amman, Jordan. So my mom's side and my dad's side ended up in Amman, Jordan, after the 1948 Nakba. My mom's side, as far as we can tell, is from Jerusalem, going way far back. My father's side maybe had come from the island of Crete, and maybe 500 or 600 years ago, and that's where my last name comes from, likely because it's a Greek last name. It's not a Middle Eastern Arabic name, Tanus. The nous is the mind, the understanding, the place where you can understand and know and think and contemplate God. So that's my background. That's my historical background. And the reason I speak like that is because history is funny, in that you can kind of move backwards and forwards through history. It's not just a linear progression. Things happen, and your recollection of how it happened and when it happened, and kind of changes as time progresses. So it's not necessarily linear. It's something that moves back and forth. So I just went through my personal history backwards, and I walked you through it. Now, I suppose I could tell you that my family came from Crete, settled and lived in Palestine, where St. George is from, and my mom's side is from Jerusalem. In 1948, the Nakba, they ended up in Jordan, and where my parents were born, I was born, my siblings were born, and then we all came to America in 1987, and we landed in Pennsylvania, where I was 3.5 years old, and we were there for about 20 years. I went to Penn State while I was there for 4 of those years. My priest growing up was Father Boniface Black at St. Philip in Souderton. And then after that, we moved to Houston, Texas, where we kind of found our way at St. Anthony in Spring, where I felt like I got my calling to become a priest. And then I actually left St. Anthony, went to seminary, St. Vladimir Seminary in New York. Then I got my first parish assignment in Davie, Florida. After about 2 years, the Archdiocese moved me to St. Elias in Atlanta, Georgia, where I currently am. So history has a way of working that way. And I could have easily started from the beginning, or I could start from the current position that I find myself in. I chose to start from the current position that I found myself in, and then in the second iteration, I gave you the rundown from the beginning. So I think when I speak about the church, when I speak about the things that are coming up, that are coming forward. What I'm going to do is I'm going to speak as chronologically as possible, but sometimes I'm going to have to skip around, and it could be a period of hundreds of years where I'll skip around a little bit. But generally, I'm going to start from the very beginning, and I'm going to bring you to the present day. The first set of lectures, and it's probably a long slog, is going to be just the story of Christ in a long historical narrative. After I do that, then what I will do is I'll pull out the calendar from this year, and we'll go through the calendar from January 1 all the way through. Or we might start at September 1 all the way through, and I'll explain why we do that. After that, what I'll do after I do the calendar lessons is I'll go through and tell you about prayer and fasting. After I tell you about prayer and fasting, then we will discuss the sacraments of the church, and then ready you for confession, baptism, chrismation, if those are what you're going to end up doing. And then I'll tell you how to live a holy life in my own way, and then I'll also give you some videos to pick and choose from to watch. There are other videos that you need to watch to kind of give you a good understanding of what's happening or what I think is important. It's certainly not everything. I really don't pull from a whole lot of different sources, and I try to make this a basic class. I call it Orthodox Basics. I don't expect you to be a master's level theologian at the end of these videos. I do, however, expect you to watch them all, and after you watch them, there is no quiz, there is no test, but I will ask you to come and meet with me and come and talk to me about some of the questions that you may have. You should have questions, but I'm pretty thorough that it seems like a lot of people don't have many, and that's an interesting and good thing. So I guess the question that everyone always has on their mind is, where does life begin? And this is a great question. And so when I discuss where life begins, the answer is in the question. It begins at the beginning. And so the Bible, the scriptures that we read from, the Old Testament scriptures, speaks of the beginning in a book called the Book of Genesis. And in the book of Genesis, God is telling us his story, and his story about us and how we came into existence. He doesn't explain how he came into existence because he is the existing one. He always exists, and nothing that exists without his saying. And when he speaks the word, and when he speaks his word, also his breath comes out. So God the Father is the source, and his word is Jesus Christ, and the Ruh, el-Qudus, the Holy Spirit, is what comes with the word. The breath comes with the word almost immediately. So when we speak of the beginning, we simply say that God existed, and then he spoke existence into existence. So what we know as the physical material realm, the material physical world, is only because God says so. And so we start there. God said, "Let there be light, and there was light. He didn't say, let there be sunlight. And in fact, that's something that's really interesting about the first 6 days of creation and the story of the first 6 days of creation, is that there is no sunlight until after the earth is created and there is vegetation on it. So God eventually puts a bigger light, a daylight, and a lesser light, the moonlight, for the earth, and allows those lights to bring forth vegetation, or allow it to. So what the Bible is saying, the Old Testament, the book of Genesis is saying to us, is that God is the reason that we exist. God is the reason that the earth exists. God is the reason that the vegetation on the earth exists. It's not because of the sun that the earth exists. So this is something different than maybe most of us are used to. But it is something that is very explicit in the Old Testament book of Genesis. And it specifically reads, in the beginning, in the beginning. So there's a beginning. That's the point. God made it to exist. Now, many people will ask, Father, is the Bible to be taken literally, or do we take it as an allegorical metaphor? And I would say yes. There is a school of thought in the church that's called the Antiochian school. And the Antiochian school reads everything literally, or most everything literally. And there's an Alexandrian school, which is speaking of Alexandria, Egypt, that looks and reads the Bible, the scriptures, as a parable, as a metaphor. And I think there's room for people to make these types of interpretations in the Bible. I see that it's part of the Orthodox theological understanding of the scriptures. So when it says that God created man on the sixth day, a chapter later he actually goes into the details, into the weeds of how he went about creating man. So in the first chapter of Genesis, it speaks on God created, it was good, God created, it was good, God created, it was good. Then he created man, and he saw that he was very good. And when he created man, he gave him his own image and his own likeness. And this particular passage, so to speak, in the scripture is really what baffles humanity. It's like, well, why does God give his own image and likeness to man? And like there's an extra biblical text that has an understanding that Satan himself did not like the fact that God created man with his image and likeness, because he didn't bestow his image and likeness onto the angelic realm. And because God took dirt from the earth and fashioned man and then blew proverbial breath into his lungs, okay, that Satan was angry with God for doing such a thing and rebelled and led a rebellion against God by attacking humanity, and so that's the general understanding that is not necessarily found in the book of Genesis, but humanity, Adam represents all of humanity. And so some would say Adam is a metaphor, an allegorical man, humanity. Eve then, in the story, was taken from the side of Adam, and God took her from Adam's rib after he put him into a deep sleep, and fashioned woman from Adam's side, from Adam's rib. And so some would say Adam is just an an allegorical man, not a real human being. I don't ascribe to that understanding. I take that to be very literal. I say Adam is the first man, and Eve is the mother of all the living. She is a woman. She is the woman, the first woman. Now, what we understand about Adam and what we understand about Eve from the story is that when God fashioned man and gave him his own image and likeness, he set him in paradise. And in paradise, he tasked Adam to name all of the animals because he saw that God saw that Adam was lonely, that he needed a helpmate. So he brought all the animals of the world for him to name, and perhaps even to find his helpmate from amongst the animals. But he couldn't find one who was fit for him. So it's at that point that God takes Adam and puts him into a deep sleep and takes from his side, his rib, and he fashions woman from his side. Now, St. John Chrysostom is going to say he didn't pull him from his head, from his skull. He didn't pull him from his foot, so as to not basically say that man lords over woman or woman lords over man, because she was taken from his head or from his foot. So she's taken from his side so that he could, they could be equals. They could be equals. Not the same, but equal. They're complementary, certainly, in so many ways. When they're in the garden, God is able to say to them, there are two trees there. And in those two trees, they were not permitted to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For on the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. So this is a commandment that God gives to Adam and Eve. This isn't the first commandment. This is the second. The first one is for them to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. The second one is don't eat of this tree, because of the day that you eat of it, you will die. The fruit of the tree of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So what do? Well, the story goes that Adam and Eve, basically, Eve is tempted by a serpent, which is the devil. He's taken the form of a serpent, and he's cunning and he's sly and he's slick. He uses half-truths to deceive the woman Eve. And he says to her, oh, is that what God said to you? It's that he knows that if you eat of this tree, you will be like him. And so he doesn't want you to be like him. So he's basically, he's preventing you from knowing good and evil. So she sees the fruit. She's tempted by it. Satan is telling her a half-truth. And so she reaches her hand out. She eats of the fruit, and her eyes are opened. She doesn't immediately die, by the way. She goes to her husband and says, hey, you need to eat of this tree. He doesn't argue with her. He eats of it. And so immediately what happens is they recognize that they are naked. And so a lot of the church fathers will say that this tree is a fig tree. Not an apple tree. But the reason for it is there's figs in that general part of the world. And the fig leaves, if you've ever seen a fig leaf, you can actually take it and cover your body parts with it. And that's what they did. Once they recognized that they were naked, they started pulling the leaves off the tree and covering themselves with it. So that when God walks through the garden, they're hiding from him. And he's saying, where are you? Where are you? He knows what they've done already. but they're going to find themselves lying to God almost immediately. And so what happens is they start hiding. They say, God, we notice that we're naked, so we're covering ourselves. So who told you you're naked? It's a whole conversation that they're having with God. And so God finds out. I mean, it's like a parent, knowing the answer from their child, that they've already done the wrong thing. And they're like, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. And then they blame each other. Like Adam is like going, oh, the woman that thou gave me, she's the one that told me to eat of it. And, so we're always passing blame to everybody else. We won't take responsibility for our own sins. We do the wrong thing and we basically say it wasn't me. Those kinds of things happened. So there was a penalty for that, so to speak. The wages, as St. Paul will say later, very late in the New Testament era, he's going to say that the wages of sin is death. So what we earn from sinning is death. And so there's a few, so to speak, punishments that come. It's really more so, I wouldn't think of it in terms of punishment, but in terms of consequence. The consequence of sin is death. And a lot of fathers will say, this was a mercy that God gave to us, because once we put on these garments of skin, so to speak, we started to decay. We started to return to our earthly form, and the earth decays a lot, and so our bodies are going from be very healthy to something that will no longer function properly. And so God, as a mercy, will allow us to die. And death is like this really difficult question, a really difficult thing to contemplate. And it's really the thing that humanity can't escape from. And in that same garden, there was something called the tree of life. The tree of life. Now, had they eaten of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then immediately gone to eat of the tree of life, they would have had a problem, because then they would live forever. Okay, so God banishes them from the garden. He banishes them. So that's one of their punishments. But it's really to prevent them from living forever in this fallen state. God has a plan to redeem all of humanity. It's going to take a little while for us to be redeemed. It's not going to happen overnight. But the problem is death. The problem is sin and death. And God has to solve this problem. Humanity cannot solve it. So Satan is obviously trying to destroy humanity, and God is trying to save and preserve humanity. So this becomes a big problem for Adam and Eve, and they're going to have to be the parents of all the living. And all of the living are going to have to deal with the consequence of that action. So in the Roman Church, this first sin is called the original sin. In the Orthodox Church, we will call this ancestral sin. And this ancestral sin, we are not guilty of it. We are not guilty of the sin of our fathers. We don't inherit the guilt of our fathers, our ancestors. But we do have consequences that extend all the way back to there, because we are born into a sinful world, and as a result of it, we do sin. We do sin. Well, most of us do, right? But as when babies are born, they're not born sinners, guilty of the sin of Adam and Eve. We would reject that notion. So Adam and Eve are interesting, and their story is really profound and wonderful. So the tree of life is going to be the tree of the cross. I'm going to say that again. The tree of life is going to be the tree of the cross that Jesus Christ is going to take, and that will become the proverbial tree of life later in this story. Immediately after Adam and Eve fall, they start having children, and the fall of humanity is really rapid and it's really bad. So they have two sons initially, and their two sons, one is named Cain, and the other one is named Abel. Abel is a sheep herder, and Cain is a farmer, functionally. I might have them mixed up right now, but what they do is they offer a tithe, 10%, unto God. And God lets down a fire from heaven and accepts the offering of Abel because he gave the first fruits. So he gave the fruit. He was the farmer. He gave the first fruits of his harvest, whereas Cain didn't. He gave the sloppy last 10. And so God did not accept his offering. So what does Cain do? Cain gets really jealous of his brother, Abel, that he decides that he is going to kill his brother. And God warns him not to do such a thing. He says, sin is crouching at the door, but you must not give into it. What does he do? You actually have to master sin. You can't allow sin to master you. And so what does he do? He allows sin to master him. He kills his brother, the righteous Abel, and this is fratricide from the very beginning. And this is a terrible, terrible thing that happens. Cain is basically kicked out of there. He ends up going in another direction and having more children and so on. So now people will ask me, okay, so who did they have as their wives? I suppose they had their sisters as their wives in the initial iteration of life. The scripture doesn't speak on this in any way. But anyways, Cain continues to live. He is basically kicked out or leaves that general area of his parents. His parents have another child. His name is Seth. So they give birth to this other child, and Jesus Christ is going to come from that particular line, the line of Seth. Seth is going to have Enoch as one of his children, and Enoch is going to be this interesting figure in the Old Testament, and he'll make his way back into the New Testament in the book of Revelation. Enoch, it says, walked with the Lord, and then he was no more, which most understand that to mean that he was taken up to be with God in heaven. So he didn't die a natural, or I guess an unnatural, human death. He was assumed into heaven and didn't die. That's how that's interpreted. Now, in the book of Revelation, he will die with someone else who I'll speak of later. So Adam is going to Adam and Eve are going to be the parents of all of humanity. They are going to, if you think about it in the Arabic text, in Arabic, Beni Adam means the son of Adam. So that's what humanity is in general. And Eve is going to be the mother of all the living. And this is a very important thing because there are people in the world that think that they are the chosen ones of God, that they are exceptional. And what the Orthodox Church would say is no one is exceptional, okay? That God is the father of Adam and Eve and all the living. We have one common ancestor, and we all are Beni Adam. We are all the sons of Adam and Eve. And so we have common parents, and there's no like Chinese Adam and Eve and Palestinian Adam and Eve and an African Adam and Eve and Russian Adam and Eve, so that, God came to save one of them and we're superior. No, that's not the way it works. We have one common ancestor, and God is going to utilize one line of Adam, and here we go, Seth, for him to come into the world and to save humanity. From what? From sin and death. Like this is the overarching theology. This is the understanding of what Christ came to do. So we have this problem. We have the problem of Adam and Eve sinning, falling short of the glory of God. As a result of sin, death. And now death is what Christ is going to have to come to save us. So we have an idea then that since all men must die, fall asleep in the Lord, that Jesus Christ is going to have this mission to come and save us. So humanity kind of grows and is now spreading across the whole of the earth. And God looks out one day and he is terribly disappointed with humanity. And so he has a man who comes from the line of Seth. His name is Noah. And it says in the scripture that man's heart is continually towards sin. It is constantly inclined towards sin. And so God is grieved, it says, in his heart. And so because of that grief that he feels, he decides that he is going to send a flood upon all of the earth. And he basically tasks Noah. He sees that Noah is a good and righteous man from the line of Seth. And he basically says, Noah, you have 40 days and 40 nights to build an ark. And he gave him all the measurements of the ark. He told him, make it out of gopher wood and so on and so forth. And build the ark. You're going to then, after you assemble the ark, you're going to go, I'm going to send basically, you're going to go and get a male and a female of every animal, on every living animal that's on foot on the earth. And you're going to go and grab all those animals, 2 by 2, male, female. You're going to bring them into the ark. I'm going to send water. It's going to flood everywhere. And that flooding is going to wipe out all of humanity in one fall swoop. And those who make it onto the ark will be saved. So who makes it on the ark? It's his family and all the animals. So he's got 3 sons. They're called Shem, Ham, and Japheth. They're going to go onto the ark. He's going to take all the animals, like he said, and a few extras that he needs to offer sacrifice afterwards. He's going to have a raven on the ark, and he's also going to have a dove on the ark. And at first, he's going to send out a raven, and the raven is going to, after 40 days and 40 nights, and all the flooding happens, and as God says it was going to, Noah believed this and believed God, and took him at his word. He did exactly as he said. He got everything together. The rain came, and then it was time. The rain stopped, and he sent a raven out, and the raven fell on all the carcasses and started eating the flesh, which is really terrible, which is also kind of surprising. Because when we think of the ark, we tend to think that God sends out the dove, and that's what we focus on in the scripture. But there was a time when he sent out another bird, and it fed on the carcasses of the human beings that were floating to the top. So, there's an interesting story there, by the way. They're Nephilim, and it kind of seems like humanity was mingling with some other animals or other creatures or giants. So some people will pick up on that and really make a big thing of it, and so on. But regardless, after the water starts receding some more, he sends out the dove. I think the third time it comes back with a twig of the olive tree, and now Noah knows that he can come off of the ark. And when he comes off of the ark, he basically does builds an altar for the Lord. And I guess this is the first altar that we see in Scripture. And what is an altar? Altar is a table. Altar is a table where you offer sacrifice. And so the altar table that Noah builds, he offers up some of the, I think they're pigeons or something along those lines, and he offers them as an offering unto God after he is saved and lives on the ark. Now the ark is certainly a type of something else. The way that the tree of life in the garden was a type of the cross of Christ, the ark represents baptism, right? And we use in the baptismal service olive oil, and we even say a prayer in the baptismal service, the beak of the twig of the olive tree. So this is a token of reconciliation. If you notice, when peace is declared, it's a dove that's shown. There's an olive tree in its beak. So it means peace. It's a symbol of peace. It's a symbol of hope. It's a symbol of renewal, of restoration, of something new that's coming after, something better that's coming. Well, what happens is Shem, Ham, and Japheth come off of the ark too, and they have this whole experience with their father that they have to kind of make their way through as well. And so it's not like all of the sin is basically cleansed. They're going to sin almost immediately out of the ark. So God is like puts a bow, a rainbow, and basically tells Noah, I'm never going to destroy the earth like this again. Okay, that's not the way to do it. So there is this form of baptism, certainly for the world, and a renewal. So you see that, but there's no more of this fear that everything will be destroyed again. Everything will be destroyed again. Now, every culture in the world, this is something very unique, has a story about the great flood. So every culture basically believes there was a great flood somewhere in their history, and and there's a story of that, and that's like the new beginning for those people. So so what do they do? Um, they start rebuilding. Um, they start rebuilding. So Shem has three sons: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And and in those three sons, Shem is going to be the line that Jesus is going to come from. So etymologically, Shem is the father of the Shemites, which is where you get the word Semites. Semites. So Shemite is anyone from that region of the world, which is which is the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Moabites, the Israelites, the Hebrews, the Midianites, there's so many different ites. Okay, they're known as the Shemites. Okay, so which later becomes known as the Semites, which is just an interesting uh, word that gets used in a different way nowadays. Really, really post World War One and Two. I think that's a good place to stop for right now. Um, Next time we'll visit Abraham, and we'll start talking about him and his story, um, and we'll pick up there.